I was jogging along the narrow trail that connected my modest office to my house, roughly 2 miles away. The run wasn't planned, more of a spontaneous decision. I'd been frustrated after receiving some work materials that were a disorganized mess, and after spending about an hour unsuccessfully trying to make sense of them, I decided I needed a break. I swapped my jeans and button-up for shorts, a t-shirt, and a pair of running shoes. I grabbed sunglasses and a headband before heading out. My plan was to jog home to pick up a set of papers I needed, about 20 pages or so. Roughly half a mile from my house, I spotted a man about 200 yards ahead on the trail. That caught my attention since this particular path was essentially a private route leading straight to my property, with no other exits or throughways. The trail ended at a rocky bluff near the rear of my house, and I saw the man veer off in that direction, straight toward my back entrance. That wasn't normal, so I picked up my pace. As I rounded a small bend, I caught a clear view of him. He was standing by the patio door at the back of my house. I watched as he turned the handle and let himself inside. The door hadn't been locked. I stopped dead in my tracks, processing what I'd just witnessed. My wife, Alice, was working from home that day, so I sprinted to the door. When I reached it, it was locked from the inside, which made sense, since I usually locked it whenever I left. I took out my key and quietly let myself in. I slid open the patio door just enough to step inside. The kitchen, where Alice usually set up her laptop and papers, was empty, but her laptop and some documents were still spread out on the table. I heard soft, muffled noises coming from upstairs. Just inside the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, I kept an old police baton, a relic from my grandfather's days on the force. It served as both a keepsake and a handy bit of protection. I grabbed it, holding it tight, as I silently climbed the carpeted stairs, careful not to make a sound. The master bedroom door was closed, and the noises, unmistakably sexual, were coming from inside. My stomach twisted. I turned the handle, slowly pushing the door open. What I saw froze me in place. Clothes were scattered on the floor, not Alice's, but the man's. He was without clothes, just about to mount my completely exposed wife. Without hesitation, I strode across the room and swung the baton, delivering a loud, stinging smack to his bare backside. He shrieked, clutching his rear in pain. Alice's eyes flew open, her arms and legs splayed out, her expression blank with shock. She mumbled something I couldn't make out. I instantly recognized the man, Simon Green, Alice's boss. He scrambled off her, standing beside the bed while keeping one hand on his reddened backside. "Wait, this isn't what it looks like. I was invited," he blurted out. I looked at Alice, but she didn't say a word. Simon squared his shoulders, trying to appear tough despite being without clothes. "You better put that down or I'll take it from you and kick the crap out of you." He was bigger than me, older too, probably around 40, while I was in my 30s. I'd heard whispers that he was into martial arts and figured that explained his cockiness. What he didn't know was that I played a lot of tennis. My backhand was pretty lethal. I smiled, which only seemed to set him off more. With a guttural roar, he lunged at me from across the room. I smoothly swung the baton in a clean, practiced backhand arc, aiming for his face. At the last second, he tried to duck, but all it did was shift the target. The baton struck him squarely across the forehead. He hit the ground like a dropped sack of cement and didn't so much as twitch. I glanced down at the man on the floor, then over at Alice. She was completely out of it, staring blankly, her mouth slightly open, a thin line of drool hanging from her lip. My gaze drifted around the room until it landed on a cell phone propped up on the dresser, its camera aimed directly at the bed. The fool had been filming everything. I snatched the phone, flipped to the dialer, and called emergency. The dispatcher's voice came through the line. "Emergency! What's your emergency?" "This is Tim Jenkins," I said quickly. "I'm at 12 Arbor Circle. There's a man in my bedroom. He came at me, so I defended myself. He's down, and I think he's badly hurt. My wife's here too, but something's wrong with her. She's conscious, but not really responding." "Emergency responders are en route," the dispatcher said. "Sir, if you're holding any weapons, please set them aside. Officers will approach cautiously. Do you understand?" "Understood," I replied. "I'll be waiting out front." As the distant sound of sirens grew louder, I made my way downstairs, keeping the phone in my hand with the line still open. I set the baton on the living room sofa and walked outside, standing calmly in the middle of the lawn with my arms relaxed at my sides. The first to arrive was a patrol car, followed closely by an ambulance. 2 officers stepped out, 1 man and 1 woman, neither with their weapons drawn. The female officer, who appeared to be in charge, approached me. "Are you Tim Jenkins?" she asked. Yes, I replied. Please show us where they are. I led the officers inside, up the stairs, and stopped at the master bedroom doorway, standing back as they took in the scene. The door was still ajar. Alice remained sprawled across the bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Simon hadn't moved. The female officer knelt beside Simon, checked his pulse, and immediately radioed for the paramedics. Then she turned her attention to Alice. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" the officer asked. Alice didn't respond. The paramedics stepped in to begin treating Simon, while a second ambulance crew arrived shortly after to assess Alice. The female officer, her badge identified her as Sergeant Leslie Haddon, spotted a robe hanging on the closet door. She retrieved it, carefully helped Alice into it, and gently guided her into the guest bedroom. Before stepping back into the hallway, Sergeant Haddon turned to me. "Go wait downstairs," she said. "Stay inside the house, but stay out of the way for now." I found myself pacing in the kitchen, trying to process everything that had just happened. My fingers tightened around the phone still in my hand, Green's phone. Realizing I had it, I took it upstairs to my desk where I kept a small computer for personal use. I plugged it in, quickly transferring the video to my hard drive. Then I copied all the data from the phone into a separate file and sent the video to my office email. Once that was done, I powered the phone down and left it on Alice's desk. From the kitchen doorway, I silently observed as the paramedics carried Green out the front door, loaded him into the ambulance, and sped away. Meanwhile, a policewoman I didn't recognize escorted Alice into the living room, keeping her at a distance from me. She moved sluggishly, head bowed, never once looking up. She was still wrapped in the robe, now paired with a set of sneakers. Sergeant Haddon entered the kitchen a few minutes later, accompanied by an older man in plain clothes, Detective John Dempster. She formally introduced him, but it wasn't necessary. He and I were already acquainted. Although my legal practice had shifted to civil cases in recent years, I had spent time as a criminal defense attorney, and Dempster and I had crossed paths on multiple cases. I had always found him to be straightforward and professional, and we had gotten along well. "Tim, I'm sorry you had to go through this," Dempster said. "Do you know the man you struck?" "Yeah," I replied. "Simon Green, my wife's boss." "Do you have any idea where he lives? We found his clothing, some sports gear, and a credit card, but there was no ID on him." "I don't really know him personally," I admitted. "Last I heard, he was married with kids in school, but that was at least a year ago." "Did you have any reason to suspect he and your wife were having an affair?" "No," I said flatly, "not until today. Walk me through everything that happened." I recounted the entire sequence of events. The frustrating morning at work, my spur-of-the-moment decision to jog home for some paperwork, spotting the man near the back entrance, following him inside, and the confrontation that followed. I left nothing out. There was no reason to. Detective John Dempster listened carefully, then asked, "So, you didn't recognize Green before you went inside?" "No," I said. "I only realized who he was after he rolled off the bed." "You first kick him on the backside?" "Yeah," I confirmed. "I wasn't trying to seriously hurt him. I just wanted him off my wife, regardless of what she wanted." Dempster's brow furrowed slightly. "But then you struck him again. Why?" "He threatened me," I explained. "Told me to drop the baton or he'd take it and use it against me. Then he charged at me." Dempster raised an eyebrow. "Charged at you?" "Yeah. Roared, actually, like some kind of animal," I said. "I think he was trying to intimidate me. It worked, honestly. I meant to hit him lower, but he must have dipped his head at the last second." "All right," Dempster said with a nod. "As of now, your wife isn't suspected of any crime. We're running tests to check if she was under the influence of any substances. Once she regains full awareness, I expect she'll confirm what you've told me." "John," I said, "that phone downstairs, it belongs to Green. I think he was recording everything. The Zex, the fight. It's probably all on there." Dempster frowned. "Why is it in the kitchen?" "I used it to call emergency and left it there when I stepped outside to wait for the officers," I explained. Without hesitation, Dempster signaled to a nearby crime scene tech to collect the phone for evidence. Then, I asked the question that had been weighing on me since this all began. "What happens to Alice now?" "I'm not sure," Dempster admitted. "Let's go find out." Sergeant Leslie Haddon and I followed Dempster into the living room. Alice was sitting on the couch, a uniformed officer and a medic positioned beside her. She still looked detached, barely responsive. Dempster turned to the medic. "What's the situation with Mrs. Jenkins?" "We're transporting her to the county hospital for evaluation," the medic replied. She appears to be in shock, but her vitals are stable. For the first time since everything unraveled, Alice looked up. Her glassy eyes met mine, and a single tear traced a slow path down her cheek. "I'm so sorry, Timmy," she whispered. Then just as quickly her expression went blank again, her gaze drifting away. "Alice?" I called her name, stepping forward, but she didn't react. She was lost in whatever fog had overtaken her. Minutes later, the paramedics wheeled her out, loading her into the ambulance. I stayed behind only long enough to change into fresh clothes before heading to the hospital in my car. The officers remained at the house, assuring me they would either secure it or leave someone stationed there. As I drove, I called Alice's parents. They lived one state away, about 2 hours from us. I kept the explanation brief, but promised to update them once I knew more. Alice and I had been together since she was 21. We met in college, got married soon after, and by then I was finishing law school. She had landed a job almost immediately at Simon Green's insurance firm, which was one of the largest in the city. Over the years, she worked her way up, from clerk to assistant, eventually joining Green's department, which handled housing and auto policies. I had attended plenty of company events with her over the years and had never noticed anything suspicious between them. I had even met Green's wife and kids once. Alice had been with the company for over 6 years, and I had always believed our marriage was strong, at least until today. What I witnessed earlier left no doubt in my mind that whatever was happening had been consensual. Unless the toxicology report proved otherwise, this was likely the end of our marriage. But if she had been sedated, how? When? There hadn't been an opportunity, no signs, no evidence. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that she had been expecting him. She had likely already been undressed, and the back door had been left unlocked on purpose. Had this happened before? Was this the first time? Or had it been going on for months? Years? Alice had always been beautiful, full of warmth, kind-hearted. Our bed life had never suffered. Even during the busiest stretches of work, we always made time for each other. Lately, my schedule had evened out. I no longer handled criminal cases, which meant no more long hours or unpredictable nights. So what was this? What had changed? Then there was Green himself. He was a large guy, sure, but from what I saw today, he wasn't impressive where it counted. Not that it mattered. The betrayal stung, and the unanswered questions burned even worse. When I arrived at the hospital, I spotted someone familiar in the waiting area, Simon Green's wife. I had met her once before, but she didn't seem to recognize me now. She was sitting alone, anxiously twisting her hands in her lap. For now, I left her alone and went to check on Alice. They let me into Alice's hospital room. She was asleep, her face pale and her breathing soft and steady. I stood near the foot of the bed, unsure of what to feel or even think. It was impossible to reconcile the woman I knew with the one I'd caught earlier that day. I needed to understand how we ended up here before making any decisions I couldn't take back. A woman in a white coat stepped into the room. "I'm Dr. Moore," she said with a polite smile. "Are you her husband?" I nodded, my throat dry. "Can you tell me what's wrong with her?" I asked. Dr. Moore offered a reassuring, professional tone as she replied, "She's experiencing what we call dissociative shock. Essentially, her mind is temporarily shut down in response to severe psychological trauma. She's not unconscious, but she's detached from reality for the time being. With some rest, she's likely to come around." "Do you have any idea when she might wake up?" "Most likely within 3 to 4 hours," Dr. Moore said. "It depends on how her body responds to the medication we gave her to help her relax." "All right, thanks," I said. "I'd like to stay here with her." "Of course," Dr. Moore said with a small nod, before turning toward the door. Before she could leave, I spoke up again. "One more thing. Do you know the status of Simon Green? Do you have any updates on how he's doing?" Dr. Moore hesitated slightly. "Are you a family member?" "No," I said, "just someone who knows him." She hesitated, then said, "I'm not supposed to share specifics, but he's been placed in a medically induced coma. He sustained a significant head injury." Once she left, my thoughts circled back to Green. For a while, I genuinely believed I might have eliminated him. Apparently, that wasn't the case, at least not yet. I called Alice's parents to give them an update. They were ready to get in the car and drive down immediately, but I managed to convince them to wait. I was up front with them, telling them I'd walked in on Alice and her boss having an affair, and that I needed some time with her to figure things out. Her mom, Joni, went quiet for a moment before saying softly, "Tim, I've been concerned about Alice lately. She hasn't seemed herself for months. Anxious, distracted. Please, before you make any final decisions, let her explain." "I will," I promised. I'm not sure it'll change anything, but I'll hear her out. After hanging up, I went looking for Simon Green's wife. I found her sitting alone in the ICU waiting room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Mrs. Green?" She looked up, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Yes? Can I help you?" "My name's Tim Jenkins. My wife works for your husband. I believe they were involved." Her expression barely flickered. "Involved?" She repeated, her voice flat. "Yes," I confirmed. "I came home this morning and found them without clothes together in our bedroom." "Ah," she said with a tired shake of her head. "So you're the one who kicked him." "I am," I admitted. "And no, I'm not sorry." She didn't look surprised. "Simon's been acting strange for a while now," she said quietly. "He gave up coaching the kids' soccer team, said work was overwhelming. Guess I know what was really keeping him busy." "I can't say how long it's been going on," I replied, "but judging by how quickly things escalated, I'd bet this wasn't their first time." "Probably not," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "Have the doctors told you anything about his prognosis?" I asked. "Not much," she admitted. "There's been talk of surgery, but they're waiting to see how stable he is first." "I see," I said. "Are you heading home to your kids?" "They're with my parents right now," she said. "All they know is that Simon's in the hospital. I haven't told them anything else." Needing some air, I stepped outside for a bit, hoping to clear my head. My mind kept circling back to Alice, the woman I'd built a life with. I couldn't make any lasting decisions until I heard from her directly. I stood outside for close to an hour before heading back inside. When I returned to Alice's room, she was still behind a thin privacy curtain in the emergency department. I stepped in quietly and took a seat beside her bed. Before long, my exhaustion caught up with me, and I dozed off. A strange sound, somewhere between a moan and a soft whimper, startled me awake. Alice's eyes were open, but the moment she saw me, they squeezed shut again, and she began softly crying. Unsure of how to handle the situation, I went to find someone who could help. I spotted Dr. Moore at the nurse's station and waved her over. "She's waking up," I said quietly, "but I'm not sure I should be here." She saw me and shut down again. "Let me check on her," Dr. Moore said, disappearing behind the curtain. Though I couldn't see them, I could hear their conversation. "Alice, how are you feeling?" Dr. Moore asked gently. Alice's voice was faint and cracked. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Alice, you need to fully wake up and face this, whatever it is. You can't keep retreating into yourself." "Okay," Alice whispered. "Where's Tim? He was here, wasn't he?" "He thought you might need space, so he stepped out. He's close by, though." Alice sighed. "I don't know how long I can face this. I really screwed up." After a pause, she added, "What about Simon? Is he okay?" "Your husband kicked him pretty hard," Dr. Moore answered. "He's stable, but they're monitoring him closely. Surgery's a possibility." Alice groaned softly. "I told him not to push his luck. It was stupid. He lost." "It's not a game," Dr. Moore said gently. "I know," Alice replied. "I lost, too." "Maybe it's time you talk to Tim," Dr. Moore suggested. "Would you like me to bring him in?" "Maybe later," Alice said. "Once I'm home." I stepped in, brushing the curtain aside. "I'll take you home when you're ready. Then we'll talk, soon." "Thank you," Alice said, her voice trembling. "I really am sorry." "We'll talk," I repeated, my tone neutral. I turned to Dr. Moore. "How soon can she be discharged?" "She's ready now," Dr. Moore replied. "I'll get her paperwork started and find her some clothes." Dr. Moore stepped out to handle the discharge process. Alice turned toward me, her lip quivering. "I want you to know. I'm so sorry, Timmy." "Save it," I said, cutting her off. "We'll talk at home." Dr. Moore returned with a basic set of clothes for Alice. I left the room to give her privacy while she changed. The unspoken message was clear. I wasn't interested in seeing her undressed, not now, and maybe not ever again. They wheeled her out to the hospital entrance, where I brought the car around. She got in silently, and we drove the 10 minutes home without saying a single word. Tears rolled down her face, but she didn't speak, and I didn't offer any comfort. I unlocked the front door, and we stepped inside what had once been our peaceful, happy home. The police had cleared out, and the downstairs was surprisingly neat. Alice sank into the old rocking chair in the living room, eyes blank as she stared at nothing. "I'm going upstairs to check on things," I told her. "I'll be down in a minute." Upstairs, the bedroom was a wreck. One section of the carpet had been cut out, probably the spot where Green's head had hit the floor. I'd have to figure out why later. The bed was stripped bare, dresser drawers left halfway open. Cleaning up would have to wait. There were more pressing matters. The rest of the rooms were untouched, except for the bathroom, where a thin layer of fingerprint powder had been dusted across the sink and mirror. The sight only deepened the knot in my stomach, making me even more reluctant to go back down and face Alice. I took a moment to call her parents to let them know she was back home. They sounded relieved, though they immediately asked if they should come over. I couldn't give them a clear answer. After a pause, I told them I'd call again later, then reluctantly headed back downstairs. "Do you want anything? Water? Coffee?" I asked. Alice raised her head slightly, her eyes empty and distant. "No, nothing." I sat down across from her on the couch, putting about 6 feet of space between us. We sat like that for a while, the silence thick, stretching between us. "Can you tell me why, Alice? I thought we were good. I thought we were happy." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "It's complicated, Tim," she began softly. "I've worked for Simon for years and I always liked him, but only as a colleague, never anything more. But about a month ago, things shifted. He started paying me extra attention, little comments about how nice I looked, brushing my arm when he walked past. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all that time, that didn't set off any alarms for you?" She lowered her gaze. "Maybe it should have," she admitted, "but I liked it. It felt good to be noticed, and he's attractive. I didn't expect to feel anything, but I did. It took me a while to even admit that to myself." "So you knew exactly what was happening, and you let it keep going?" Alice covered her face with her hands, then let them fall to her lap, looking me straight in the eye. "Yes." In that moment, something in me clicked. Something final. This wasn't a misunderstanding, some manipulated scenario, or the result of being sedated. She had walked into this with her eyes wide open. "We went out to dinner one night," she went on. "I asked him why he was acting this way after so many years of professionalism. He said he'd been drawn to me from the start, but had buried it. He called it pushing down his desire." "And what was wrong with me, Alice?" My voice was calm, but my hands were clenched. "What made you open that door for him?" "It wasn't you," she said quickly. "He just made me feel wanted in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. He said he wanted me more than you ever had. To him, I was something new, someone exciting. And you didn't think to talk to me about any of this? Not once? What was I supposed to say? That I was tempted to cheat on you because it felt thrilling?" Her voice cracked. "I didn't plan for any of this, Tim. How many times have you slept with him?" Her face turned red, her fingers twisting in her lap. "None. Today was supposed to be the first time. And the only time." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then you came home. When I saw you in the doorway, the way you looked at me, you didn't even look angry. Just disgusted." I shook my head slowly. "I saw both of you without clothes, and he was about a breath away from being inside you. You seriously expect me to believe that was the first time?" "It's the truth," she insisted. 2 days ago we kissed. Just once. There was a little touching, but I stopped him. I told him today would be the only time when you were supposed to be at work, that's all." "This is impossible, Alice. If you saw what I saw, you wouldn't believe you either." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, Tim, I'm telling you the truth." "I don't know if I can ever believe you again." "What am I supposed to do?" Her voice trembled. "I love you, Tim, not Simon. I'm so sorry. I got caught up in something, and I couldn't stop myself." "How did he get under your skin so easily?" I asked. "He's confident, direct. He knows exactly what he wants and isn't afraid to say it. And he wanted me. And you wanted him," I said flatly. "I wanted the attention," she whispered. "The excitement, but I love you." "You say that," I replied. "But actions matter more than words." Her shoulders shook as sobs overtook her, her hands covering her face again. I stood, my voice low and cold. "I need some space." Without waiting for her response, I went upstairs to my office, closing the door behind me. I powered on my computer and pulled up the files I had extracted from Simon Green's phone. The call log from the past 2 months was eye-opening. Simon had been calling Alice frequently, always after work hours, never during the day when they could have discussed actual work matters. The text messages were mostly innocuous on the surface, but the pattern was clear. They'd been going out to lunch together twice a week for weeks. Considering Alice only went into the office 2 days a week, that meant every single time she was in the office, they had lunch together. I steeled myself and opened the video Simon had recorded. It began as he followed Alice upstairs, her robe barely covering her body. She led him into the bedroom, then gently pushed him down onto the floor. The camera jostled as he set it on the dresser, angling it toward the bed. "You're beautiful, Alice, even better than I imagined," Simon's voice said, full of hunger. "Thanks, Si," Alice said softly, sitting on the bed and smiling. He stripped off his clothes eagerly, already visibly aroused. "I can't wait any longer." Alice lay back, her arms open, legs parted. "Come on! I want this too!" He climbed onto the bed, and that's when I burst in and struck him. The video captured everything from the sharp crack of the baton to his scream and the chaos that followed. I watched it all, right up to the moment I grabbed the phone to call emergency. Nothing in the footage gave me any clarity about whether this was truly their first time. It could have been. But Alice's eagerness, her comfort with him, made it hard to believe. It felt rehearsed, like they had already crossed every line but the final one. I went back downstairs and told Alice I had to go back to my office to wrap up some work. It was past 3 by then, and I didn't care whether she believed me or not. I needed space and some distance. The jog to my office helped clear my mind, if only a little. The raw, blinding anger had cooled, replaced by something quieter but heavier: certainty. I knew where I stood now. Once at the office, I shut everything down for the day. Before leaving, I spent a few minutes reviewing the state's divorce laws. Infidelity was still technically grounds for divorce here, though it was rarely used since no-fault divorces were more common. If both spouses agreed to separate, the waiting period was 6 months. If one refused, it could stretch to 18 months or more. I wasn't sure if I wanted a divorce, but separation felt inevitable. I drafted a simple separation agreement. It covered the basics. We'd live apart, manage our finances independently, and wouldn't engage in any physical closeness. The most important clause stated that neither of us would sleep with anyone else during the separation. If either of us broke that rule, the other could immediately file for divorce without waiting out the separation period. I printed 3 copies and set them aside. When I got back to the house, Alice was in the kitchen preparing dinner: spaghetti with meat sauce and a side salad. She was dressed in an old tracksuit, her face bare of makeup, her feet bare against the tile floor. When she saw me, her expression flickered with uncertainty, almost as if she wasn't sure how to act. "Smells good," I said, breaking the awkward silence. "Thanks," she answered softly. "Want me to help with anything?" "I've got it under control," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But if you want carrots in your salad, they're in the fridge." I diced a carrot, tossed it into my salad, and we ate together without much conversation. There was an open bottle of red wine, and we each poured ourselves a glass. After we finished eating, we cleaned up side by side, barely exchanging a word as we washed the dishes and wiped down the counters. "Let's sit down and talk," I said once the kitchen was tidy. Alice's posture stiffened slightly, her unease obvious, but she followed me into the living room. Her voice was faint when she finally spoke. "Tim, I want you to know again how sorry I am. I need to figure out how I let things get so out of control. I've already decided I'm going to start seeing a therapist." "That's fine," I replied. "But right now, I think we need some time apart. I'll find a place nearby, and you can stay here. I don't feel comfortable living here anymore." Her voice trembled. "Are you sure? I feel awful about all of this. Are you thinking about divorce? Is that where this is headed?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "This is just space for now. I need time to think." I handed her the separation agreement I'd drafted. Her hands shook slightly as she read it, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. My signature was already on the bottom. "Can we hold off signing for a few days?" she asked. "I'd like my mom to come stay with me for a little while." "That's fine," I said. "Just let me know when you're ready." "Tim," she said hesitantly, "I meant what I said about counseling. Maybe if my therapist thinks it could help, you'd come with me sometimes?" "Maybe," I said, my voice non-committal. "I still love you, Alice, but I'm angry. I'm confused. I feel like something inside me broke, and I'm not sure I'll ever get back to who I was." "Me too," she whispered. "But you caused this," I said plainly. "You're the one who made the choice. You're not the woman I thought you were. The only difference between the woman I loved and the woman I see now is that I know the truth. You're the same. I just didn't know who you really were until now." She dissolved into tears, shoulders shaking, her face buried in her hands. I didn't reach for her. The version of Alice I had adored would never have done this. Whoever sat across from me now, I couldn't see her the same way. Maybe I never would. I went upstairs, packed a few changes of clothes and some toiletries, and moved my things into the guest room. There was no way I could sleep beside her. The next day was a work day, but sleep barely came. I got up early, dressed quickly, and headed to the office. Around 9, I stepped out for a breakfast sandwich, surprised at how functional I felt. I answered emails, filed some paperwork with the court clerk, and dug into my case files. For the first time in days, Alice drifted to the back of my mind. Maybe that was the point of separation. Work could become my shelter. Over lunch, I browsed local apartment listings online and found a studio just a few blocks from my office. I scheduled a walkthrough for the following morning. The hours passed quickly, and I felt oddly relieved to be busy, like motion was the only thing holding me together. At 5:30, I left work and started the walk home. We'd been renting our 3-bedroom house for the last 4 years, and with the lease expiring in a couple of months, the timing almost felt like fate. It had always felt like home. Until now. I took the same path I'd run the day before, entering the house through the sliding door and back. Alice was at the stove again, and the fragrant scent of fish stew filled the air. Cooking had always been something she excelled at. For a fleeting second, everything felt almost normal. "Hey," I said, offering a small neutral greeting. She turned, her smile tentative and uncertain. "I made stew." "Smells good," I said. "I'm going to go change." Dinner passed in near silence, the tension heavy between us. "My mom's coming on Saturday," Alice said quietly. "Have you found a place yet?" "Possibly," I replied. "I'm looking at one tomorrow. If it works out, we can finalize everything tomorrow night." "I won't be here Saturday anyway," I added. "Doesn't have to be this way, Tim," she said softly. "I swear to you, nothing like this will ever happen again." I met her gaze. "Your promises don't carry much weight anymore." She held my eyes for a few seconds, searching for something. Forgiveness, maybe. But she didn't find it. No tears this time. Just resignation. "You're letting your hurt pride cloud your judgment," she said after a pause. "What's the smart play here, Alice?" I asked, my voice cool. "Pretend you didn't cheat? Pretend I didn't walk in and see it with my own eyes? That's not happening." "You could try," she said. "I'm not saying forget, but maybe you could find a way to forgive. I've apologized." "I honestly don't know if forgiveness is even possible," I said. "What I do know is that forgetting definitely isn't. What I saw, it's etched into my mind. If you ever need a refresher, I can send you the video." She blanched. "Jesus, Tim. I'm not trying to be cruel," I said calmly. "I just want you to understand what I saw. Maybe someday you'll even blame me for showing up when I wasn't supposed to." Without another word, she turned and fled upstairs, tears falling silently down her face. I stayed in the kitchen, cleaned up our dishes, and let her go. The next day, I rented the studio apartment. It was small, but had a great view of a nearby park and the running trail. It sat perfectly between my office and the house, a location that felt fitting since I was somewhere between two lives. The place was completely unfurnished, so I ordered a bed, a couch, and a couple of chairs. The price tag stung, but I didn't have much choice. As I stood in the empty space, I wondered how much of Alice's future was still tied to Simon Green's fate. If she kept her job, she might be okay financially. If Green's situation cost her her position, I might end up supporting her, a thought I pushed to the back of my mind, at least for now. That afternoon after lunch, I sat alone, letting it sink in. There was almost no chance I'd go back to Alice. It wasn't just anger or hurt anymore. I didn't see her the same way. I had an old friend, Michelle Davis, Shelley to me, who worked at Alice's company. We'd met in college, dated briefly, then drifted apart when I met Alice and she found someone else. We stayed in touch over the years as friends. I used to think Shelley was a bit flaky, but she surprised me. Law school, marriage, and a young son. I gave Shelley a call. "Tim, I heard about Green," she said as soon as she picked up. "Self-defense," I replied. "Let's do lunch." 2 hours later, we met at one of our usual spots. After a quick hug and placing our orders, Shelley leaned in, her expression serious. "Okay," she said. "I want the whole story." I laid it all out. The affair, the fight, everything. Shelley was one of the few people I trusted enough to be completely honest with. When I finished, she shook her head. I've heard things about Green, that his marriage is falling apart and that he's been creeping out half the office. And Alice, she spent a lot of time with him. Did you ever see anything? I asked. Lunches, closed-door meetings, nothing you could pin down, but there were plenty of rumors, she said. Green's been prowling for months. So Alice wasn't the only one? Maybe not, Shelley admitted, but she was definitely a target. Why didn't you call me? I thought about it, she said, but I didn't think Alice would actually cheat, and it felt like meddling. What would you do if you were me? Shelley sighed. I honestly don't know. Just don't shut her out completely. She apologized, I said, swore it was over. Sometimes that's all there is. The conversation shifted, and I asked, how's Big Bill and Little Will? Will's great. Total tornado, but starting preschool soon, Shelley said with a smile. And Bill? She hesitated for a moment before saying, you don't need my problems. Shelley, I could use the distraction, I said. She sighed again. Bill's been distant, traveling a lot. Even when he's home, he's off. Hearing about Alice makes me wonder. Talk to him, I said gently. Don't let it build up. Thanks, Tim, she said. And for what it's worth, I always hoped you and Alice would make it. I wasn't her biggest fan, but I thought you balanced each other. We hugged goodbye, and I hoped whatever was going on with her would work out. Later, I heard Alice was back at work, on probation, but still employed. It was a relief, but it didn't change the facts. Our marriage was built on trust, and with no kids to tie us together, her betrayal felt final. I hadn't spoken to Alice since I left. A week passed. She left voicemails asking to talk, but I ignored them. One text came through letting me know she still had her job. That Saturday, I walked past the house and knocked on the patio door. Tess, Alice's mom, answered. Hi, Tess, I said. Is Alice around? She went out, but she'll be back soon, Tess replied. She's confused, Tim. Where'd she go? Tess shifted uncomfortably. Out with a friend. Tess, I said gently, you're hiding something. Who was it? Did she stay here last night? Tess sighed. She was a mess, she admitted. A coworker came by, and they went out for food. Last night? I asked. Tess fidgeted, standing just enough in the doorway to block the hall. I stepped past her and reached the front door, just as a car pulled into the driveway. A shiny new Mustang. A blonde guy got out and opened the passenger door. Alice stepped out, dressed like she'd just come from a date. Or maybe the date started last night. I walked up calmly. Hi, Alice. Thought I'd stop by. She froze, pale. The guy looked just as uncomfortable. This is James, Alice mumbled. From work. James from work, I repeated. Have a nice night? James immediately backed off. Look, I don't want any trouble. Too late for that, I said. Alice begged him to leave. He took off without argument. I turned to Alice. Couldn't even make it a week, could you? We agreed. No Zex. I'm sorry, Tim, she said quietly. I was weak. I thought we were over, but I still love you. No, you just wanted the thrill. Expect the divorce papers? Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. We don't need to talk anymore. Hire a lawyer. I left, taking the path behind the house. In some ways, her choices made mine easier. Still, I couldn't stop wondering how it all unraveled. After all those years, I'd never seen this side of her. Desperate for attention, cheating without hesitation. It didn't fit. A week later, I stopped by the house when I knew Alice would be at work. Tess opened the door and let me in. Why are you here, Tim? She asked. I want to understand how this happened, I said. I thought maybe you might know something. Tess let out a weary sigh. Alice always struggled with self-esteem. Most of high school, no one noticed her. Senior year, that changed. Her looks filled out, her skin cleared, and boys finally paid attention. She lost her pureness at prom to a football player. She never seemed insecure when we met, I said. She trusted you, Tess replied. You made her feel safe. She never cheated before. Tess hesitated, just for a moment. Did she ever say anything to you about kids? I asked. We'd planned to start trying soon, I added. Guess that's over now. Maybe that scared her, Tess said softly. Losing her looks, becoming invisible again. Then Simon gave her attention right when she needed it. And the guy with the Mustang? I asked. Same thing, Tess said. Younger guy, flashy car. Reassurance that she's still desirable. Thanks for being honest, Tess, I said. How long are you staying? She asked. Not much longer. Well, she said, take care. The divorce went through without complications. Alice moved into an apartment across town, closer to work. We had no contact afterward except for the day we signed the final papers. As we left the courthouse, she approached me. Lunch, Tim, my treat. I need to say something. I agreed. At Red Lobster, I ordered an appetizer. She got soup. As soon as the server left, she looked at me. I really screwed up, she admitted. I've been seeing a therapist. She thinks I might have a fear of having kids. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'm just wired wrong. Then, bluntly, she added, I really wanted Simon to screw me. I'm sorry. I shook my head. I'll never get that. He wasn't even a catch. What happened to him? He's alive, I said. He went back to work part-time, walks with a cane, barely uses his right hand. His wife left him. Good for her. Then after a pause, she said, I still think what you did to him was cruel. You two ruined my life, I said. But not as much as you ruined yours, she sighed. I miss you sometimes. I miss our life. I didn't respond. I can have all the sex I want now, she continued, with most men I meet, and I love it. It gets me hot. I don't know why this is happening again. Did Simon remind you of the prom guy? I asked. Maybe. Maybe I just wanted to feel that way again. Well, now you have all the freedom you wanted. Don't be mean, she said, but laughed anyway. I wasn't joking. She smirked. A new man always excites me, but I miss being married. And for the record, no one's ever been better than you in bed. One was just as good, only because he was bigger. Thanks, I said. She leaned forward. You always knew how to please me. I was a fool. Her words made me tense, and she noticed. You still find me attractive, she whispered. Tim, I'm available to you anytime. Then softly she sang, just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. Before I could react, the waitress arrived with our food. Alice stood up, pulled $30 from her purse, and dropped it on the table. We need to go, she said suddenly. Confused, I followed her gaze. Both she and the waitress were staring at my lap. Alice blushed, and the waitress, Gwen, turned bright red before flashing a playful grin. I see you two need to leave now, she teased. Then looking at me, she added, come back later, big boy. I'm off at 6. Alice shot her a glare, grabbed my hand, and practically dragged me outside. Her apartment was a short walk away. The moment the elevator doors closed, she pounced, pinning me against the wall, hands roaming. This is going to be so good, she whispered. I'm going to pin you down. Fine, I said, already breathless. The elevator doors opened to reveal 2 women waiting to get in. As we stepped out, one greeted Alice with a knowing, hi. Alice ignored her, pulling me toward her door. We barely made it inside before our clothes hit the floor. After a moment of standing there, just looking at each other, she licked her lips, and I pushed her toward the bedroom. Take me now, she whispered. I said I'd pin you down, she grinned, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Our sex was fast, raw, an explosion of pent-up tension. It was incredible. As we lay there afterward, catching our breath, I knew how ridiculous it was to sleep together the day our divorce was finalized. But those thoughts could wait. Alice sat up, looking down at me. That was the best sex we've ever had. Hell, the best I've ever had. Maybe I should have divorced you sooner. That was all it took to get me going again. The second time was slower, deeper, better. She came multiple times, trembling the way she used to when things were really good. When I finally followed, it hit just as hard as the first. I rolled off her, knowing if I stayed too close, we'd just keep going all night. Not that we stopped. The divorce was official in the morning, and we spent the rest of the day and night making love, only pausing for food. I joked about returning to Red Lobster. Alice vetoed that idea. Instead, we raided the fridge for soup and cake, eating undressed at her small table. After the last bite, she leaned back. So, should we talk, or should we have more sex? I didn't hesitate. Taking her hand, I grinned. Damn right, more sex. And that's exactly what we did. Again and again. It became a competition. Who could make the other lose control first? No winners, just satisfaction. The next morning, we had sex again before she made breakfast. As we sat at the table eating, I knew it was time to talk. Alice, I said, I hope we keep this up. Divorce sex is better than honeymoon sex. She laughed. Timmy, I realized something. Her tone softened. I never should have gotten married. I thought I could promise to be only yours, but I couldn't. I tried. I really did. But it's not who I am. That doesn't mean I want you out of my life. I meant what I sang. There's going to come a time when I want to settle down and have kids, I said. Maybe that's what pushed you away. Maybe, she admitted. But I love sex with you. No one's ever been better. She smiled faintly. Maybe we should just keep doing this until one of us finds a reason to stop. I exhaled. Fine, let's focus on right now. The weekend passed in bed. Saturday afternoon, someone knocked on the door. Alice threw on a robe and answered it. It was one of the women from the elevator, older but still attractive. Hi, Maisie, Alice said. Maisie glanced inside. I was wearing only gym shorts, clearly ready for another round. Just checking in, Maisie said. Haven't seen you in a while. Alice smirked. I'm doing very well. Maisie's gaze flickered between us. I see. Well, you just keep having a good time. You're a lucky girl, Alice. Alice grinned. I know. As soon as the door closed, she giggled. You gave her a real look at the product. Maybe you should have invited her for coffee, I teased. She'd probably want it with cream. Can't do that. Too much cholesterol. Alice burst into laughter, then pulled my shorts off again. On Monday, we both went back to work. Nothing was officially settled between us, but it didn't need to be. I knew Alice could never be my life partner again, but with Zex this good, I was happy to keep things casual. At least until I met someone I wanted to build a future with. Alice had taught me a hard lesson. I'd be more cautious next time, keep my guard up. Not that Alice cared. She was juggling me and at least 3 other guys. We were divorced, so it didn't bother me. If anything, her promiscuity just made her even more exciting. I stayed on top of my STD tests. So far, all clear. One afternoon, as I was leaving Alice's apartment after a quickie, I ran into Maisie again. I was still a little dazed, and she gave me a slow, approving once-over. Hey there, she said with a smile. Remember me? Hard to forget, I replied. She smirked. You sure know how to pitch a tent. Appreciate that, I said with a grin. Alice mentioned you were divorced. 1.5 years now, Maisie said. Single life at my age isn't all that thrilling. You look amazing and you know it, I said. Flatterer, she teased. You inviting me in? Let's make that happen, I said. Tim, right? She asked, her smile widening. Guilty, I said. Her place was right across from Alice's. As we reached her door, Alice stepped out, took one look at us, and laughed. Well, look at you, Alice said. My ex is quite the stud. Have fun, Maisie. You're in for a treat. Maisie raised a brow but didn't ask questions. She led me inside, and her tasteful bedroom didn't stay neat for long. Maisie was in her early 40s, with a son in college and a daughter downtown. She was great in bed, and I had no complaints. I left the next morning, promising to stay in touch, a promise I had no trouble keeping. In fact, I started wondering who else lived on Alice's floor, though I never explored that curiosity. A few weeks later, as I walked past the courthouse, I spotted a familiar face. A woman paused, studying me with a puzzled expression. Do we know each other? She asked. I recognized her instantly. Gwen, you were our waitress at Red Lobster, the day Alice and I bolted. Her cheeks flushed. Oh, now I remember. Strange I forgot, though I wasn't exactly focused on your face that day. Understandable, I said with a grin. Still working at the restaurant? Part-time, she said. I also do some modeling. I wasn't surprised. She was stunning. Slim, blonde, bright blue eyes, a perfect smile. I remember you invited me back at 6 that night, I said. Unfortunately, Alice and I were otherwise occupied. Are you two still a thing? She asked. Not really, I admitted. That day was actually the day our divorce was finalized. Guess it, sparked something. That's wild, she laughed. So, does that spark still work? We hook up here and there, but it's not serious, I said. She smiled coyly. Maybe you should ask me out sometime. How about tonight? I offered. Dinner at my place. I'll cook. I'm in, she said with a playful smile. She showed up at 6:30, looking stunning in a short dress and sandals. I made fried chicken and rice, and we talked over dinner. She was 25, working part-time at the restaurant and modeling for clothing catalogs. She'd split from her long-term boyfriend about 10 months earlier. At 34, I had a solid job at a law firm, a nice apartment, and a good car. I had my casual thing with Alice, occasional fun with Maisie, and a courthouse hookup here and there. But with Gwen, I felt something different, something worth pursuing. That first night, I drove her home and got a sweet, lingering kiss at her door. No invitation inside, but I was okay with that. Over the next few weeks, I realized I was falling for her, and I was pretty sure she felt the same. On our third date, we finally made it to bed. It was soft, tender, and better than I expected. A few weeks later, after a particularly wild night, I felt it was time to come clean. Gwen, I've told you about my past. I need to be honest. I'm falling for you. I've stopped seeing anyone else, she smiled. Good. Since I met you, you've been the only man in my life. I love you too, Tim. But I need to know, can you trust me, or will you always doubt me? I'd be lying if I said it wouldn't cross my mind, I admitted. But if you promise me, I'll work on it. Deal, she said. You trust me, I trust you, and we're faithful. Deal. 2 weeks later, I proposed. 3 months after that, we were married in a simple ceremony. Gwen's parents flew in from Chicago, and I even invited Alice and Maisie. Gwen met Alice right after I proposed. They were polite to each other, though I could tell Alice felt a little sad. We weren't in love, but we both knew we'd miss the Zex. Gwen and I honeymooned in the Bahamas, moved into my apartment, and built a good life. Within 3 years, we had 2 kids, Thomas and Eileen. I made partner, and we bought a house in the suburbs. Alice stayed in my life, but in a different way. She married a coworker, Larry Gibson, about a year after I married Gwen. They had 2 sons, and our kids even ended up at the same preschool. Over time, Gwen and Alice grew surprisingly close. Larry, though, never fully trusted me. And honestly, he had good reason. The spark between Alice and me never really died. Gwen trusted both of us, but Larry never could. Larry and I did have one thing in common: baseball. We played in a local men's league and split season tickets for the local MLB team. Sometimes we even went to games together. After one game, while we were stuck in traffic, I decided to clear the air. Larry, I said, I want to be upfront with you. I'm never going to sleep with Alice again. That's blunt, he replied. We could actually be friends if you believe that, I said. Tim, it's obvious you two still have something, Larry said. I won't deny there's history, I admitted. But history doesn't mean anything now. We're both married. It's over. She says the same thing, Larry said, though his voice held a note of uncertainty. But sometimes, at events, I see the way you two look at each other. Maybe you're seeing comfort, I suggested. Familiarity. But nothing's happening, and nothing will. Larry was quiet for a moment before asking, Do you ever think about her when you're with Gwen? No, I said honestly, but I do think about her sometimes. That's what worries me, he admitted. We had great Zex, married and after, I said. But after the divorce, it was just Zex, no love. Alice was good, but so were others. What makes Zex great now is love. I have that with Gwen, and you have it with Alice. Larry exhaled slowly. Never thought about it like that. Thanks for hearing me out, I said. That conversation eased some of the tension, though it didn't erase it entirely. Of course, I lied. No one, not Gwen, not Maisie, not anyone, ever matched the Zex Alice and I had after the divorce. Even now, sometimes when I see Alice, I know she's thinking about it too. And maybe years from now, when we're old, widowed, and stuck in the same nursing home, we'll find out if we can screw each other to end after all. Songs have a way of tying themselves to memories. I swear I'll never hear Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress without thinking of that rocking chair. It was a Maloof, handcrafted by Sam Maloof before he passed away, and cost my father 20 grand over 20 years ago. It's not just any rocking chair, it's a stunning work of art in Claro walnut, expertly sculpted and incredibly comfortable. Despite my father's flaws, it was the only thing of value he left me, and I still appreciate it. So, I came home to my Brentwood mansion and heard music blasting. The song started with echoing guitar arpeggios leading into a powerful arrangement. It wasn't my usual taste, but it was impressive. I followed the music into the family room, tossing my jacket aside, eager to relax in my chair with a beer and maybe some time with Tara. She'd been cranky lately, and it had been nearly 2 weeks since we last had a moment together. I walked into the family room and stopped dead. Tara was in the Maloof rocking chair without clothes, and in the middle of the act with my bandmate Carl. Both were using my favorite chair and my ex-wife, and I wasn't sure which upset me more. My mind raced. Why is she with him? Holy cow, they're going at it to the beat of the song. Thank God it's not rap, or Carl might have hurt his back. Carl was using the chair's design to his advantage for leverage. Then I wondered if Sam Malouf ever imagined his chairs being used this way. If they broke that chair, I'd lose it. I stood there for about a minute and a half until Carl noticed me and tried to disentangle himself from Tara and the chair. I was frozen, unsure of what to do. Confronting them would just make things worse and draw unwanted media attention, not to mention risk my hands and the band's future. So I did nothing. I turned and walked away, heading toward the bedroom. As I buttoned a new shirt, I caught Tara's reflection in the mirror. "Where are you going?" Tara asked, avoiding eye contact. I tried to smile but failed, just staring at her. Tara, once a teen idol, now a glamorous star, was my wife, and now, apparently, neither. "We didn't mean for it to happen," she said, sitting on the bed while I packed a duffel bag with clothes. Once I had enough, I dragged the bag to my dresser and added underwear and socks. "That's it?" Tara asked. "You're not even going to say anything?" I ignored her. Despite expecting to be furious, I just felt exhausted and defeated. It was like the wind had been knocked out of me. "God damn it, Nick! Say something!" she yelled. "What do you want me to say?" I snapped, dropping the duffel bag. "Is there a guide for finding out that your wife and one of your oldest friends are having an affair? Huh? Should I have been prepared for this? Maybe you could have dropped some hints." I was drained and just wanted to get away. I dragged my duffel bag past Tara, grabbed some toiletries from the bathroom, and packed the bag into my Escalade. Back in the house, Carl was lacing his shoes in the rocking chair. "Look, Nick," Carl began, but I cut him off. "I just want my chair," I said, picking it up. I nodded toward my Grammy Awards and framed albums. "You and Tara can box up my stuff, okay?" "Where are you going?" Carl asked. "You're the point man for the negotiations. You're not leaving, are you?" "Ship everything to my mom's house," I said, ignoring him. "I'll handle things from there." I loaded the chair into the Escalade with some guitars and started to get in. "Nick," Carl pleaded, "please let me explain." I took a deep breath. "So what is it that you didn't mean to happen? You ducking her or me catching you?" I didn't wait for a response and drove off as quickly as I could. I was 3 hours and over 250 miles west of Los Angeles, wishing Brentwood would just sink into the ocean. The driver, whose voice was rough from smoking, asked where we were headed. I told him Grant City, even though I no longer lived there. He chuckled and questioned if I was just running away, which I didn't answer. Eventually, he said people like me always pick the wrong ones. I agreed, and he called me a shallow prick. I retorted with a jab about him being just as bad. The conversation was going nowhere, but oddly, I wanted his company a bit longer. We rode in silence for 10 miles. He looked the same as always, gray hair, thick beard, big chest, and arms straining his flannel shirt. I could almost reach out, but knew it wouldn't make a difference. I faintly smelled cigarette smoke mixed with Lagerfeld cologne. After a while, he suggested I should have confronted the guy. I questioned what that would have changed, since they both knew better but acted anyway. He shrugged, saying it might have made me feel better than running away. I pointed out that confronting him would only result in swollen hands, tabloid mess, and them still being together in my chair. He reminded me he bought the chair, but I said it was mine now since he was dead. He agreed, but still said he would have kicked him. As we merged from Interstate 15 to 70, my cell rang. It was almost 11, and after 8 hours on the road, I was tired. I answered to John, our lead guitarist, shouting over nightclub noise. He said I needed to return because we were close to a major deal, and Ethan couldn't handle it alone. I told John to let Ethan handle it and turned off my phone. Leadfoot, the band from high school, had me on rhythm guitar and lead vocals, with Teddy, Carl, and Vince. In junior year, Teddy got into alternative country rock. Hearing the Jayhawks in his room hooked me instantly. We spent hours with Hollywood Town Hall, and it still reminds me of that day whenever I hear Two Angels. Teddy and I began writing songs the next day. Music was easy, but lyrics were tougher. Teddy's love for poetry and classic literature inspired us, and soon we were churning out material. Teddy focused more on music, helping with lyrics occasionally. After high school, Leadfoot won a talent contest at the Lincoln County Fair, landing us a spot at the Illinois State Fair. Despite a strong performance, we only placed second behind a tap dancing act, leading to audience boos. Ethan Rose, a talent scout, approached us after the show and set up auditions in Nashville and Memphis. By college start, we had a record deal. Teddy left the band, concerned about selling out and losing his scholarship. Ethan then searched for a new lead guitarist. During Christmas break, Carl, Vince, and I auditioned in Memphis and found John Booma, a skilled studio musician. He wasn't great with lyrics, so I took over, while Carl and Vince played and sang. Our first album, Somewhere Down Highway 66, went multi-platinum, and Plain States hit diamond platinum with over 13 million copies sold. Since then, we've relied on those successes. We're currently negotiating a 5-album deal with Columbia, who are skeptical about our long-term viability. I'm responsible for showing we have strong material, but our song collection is weak. Despite this, the band and Ethan believe we can secure the deal, though Columbia is pressing hard due to our lackluster songs. On Wednesday afternoon, after a long drive through Nebraska, I checked into a Holiday Inn in Grand Island to rest. Exhausted, I fell asleep quickly but was disturbed by a troubling dream about Tara and the band. I woke up sweating and found a call from Ethan. I told him I wouldn't be back soon and to handle things without signing anything yet. He was worried I might bail on the band, but I insisted he wait for my approval. Realizing the situation could become public, I advised him to hold off on any deals. I showered, got back on the road, and by evening was in Iowa. I was still torn about whether to leave the band and everything behind. Walter suggested that if I was too scared to confront Carl, I should let the band deal with it and not run away, reminding me I'd still have everything: my band, fame, money, and a chance for revenge on Carl. I mentioned possibly quitting anyway, but Walter dismissed it, saying I'd remember what it was like being at the top and then losing it all. I filed away his words as potential lyrics. As we drove through Iowa, Walter revealed that his departure from writing wasn't because of Trudy, but because he'd lost focus due to the celebrity life. He eventually regained his touch with his last books, but admitted that abandoning his family was part of it. He suggested that dumping Tara might be a good move, not just for refocusing, but because she's self-centered, something he warned me about before we married. That was our last conversation before he died in a rock climbing accident, and he'd said the same about Tara. After that, I slammed down the phone and didn't speak to him again before he passed away a year later. Walter argued that dumping Tara would shed excess baggage and help refocus my energies. He claimed he was the real baggage and that getting rid of his distractions, like alcohol and women, except Trudy and Susan, had helped him regain his writing skills. I knew he was telling the truth. His books after the divorce, particularly the one about a disintegrated family, reflected his self-criticism and painted me and Mom in a sympathetic light. I questioned whether getting rid of Tara would help, especially since the band wasn't exactly supportive. Walter said I should enjoy my luck and quit if I wanted to. He warned me to stay busy with something meaningful, to avoid becoming a has-been recounting past glories. I was finally in Illinois, which wasn't much better than Iowa or Nebraska, when my cell phone rang. I hesitated before answering. Tara's voice came through, asking if I was there and begging me to talk. I cut straight to the point, asking how long the affair had been going on. She dodged the question, whining that she wanted to discuss it in person rather than over the phone. I told her I didn't want to meet right now. She asked where I was and said she could come to me. I don't want you coming over, I said. I need some time to sort things out. You can't take a break now, honey. You're right in the middle of your new record deal. Carl and the guys are really concerned, she insisted. Seriously? I shouted into the phone. I catch you and Carl together and all you care about is my duties to the band? What about your responsibilities to me? Can we discuss that for a moment, Tara? Screw you, she snapped. Grow the heck up, Nick. You sleep with groupies all the time, so what's the big deal if I have a little fun on the side? It's not like you're giving me what I need. That's a bullcrap, and you know it, I said. I haven't been with a groupie since our first tour. I didn't even know you then, and I haven't been with anyone else since we got together. How many times do I need to tell you this? What about Tracy? She shot back, mentioning her younger co-star. Remember those photos in the Inquirer last year? Are you going to deny that too? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. We've gone over this a million times, I said. Nothing happened. We ran into each other at a club. She was drunk and some guys were bothering her. I just gave her a ride home. That's it. And I'll tell you again, she said. That's a damn lie, and you know it. She was all over you. She was falling down drunk, I said. You saw her legs giving out. Damn it, Nick, just come back here, she begged. Her tears sounded genuine, and crying on cue was her only real weakness as an actress. I'm sorry, I said. I can't handle this right now. We'll talk later, all right? Don't hang up on me, she pleaded. I ended the call anyway, turning off my cell phone after I hung up. Backstage at the We the People festival, we met up. Leadfoot was performing right before the Eagles' so-called final reunion tour, and Tara was the celebrity chosen to introduce us. That was 5 years ago, and both of us were at the peak of our careers. As a child star, Tara went from a small role in campus life to a leading part in a popular series. She evolved from a tomboy into a stunning young woman beloved by fans. Despite her wholesome on-screen image, her off-camera life was wild, often involving high-profile Hollywood figures and compromising photos. However, she stayed away from pills and rarely drank, which kept tabloids at bay. During a high-profile festival gig with Leadfoot, Tara approached me after our set. In tight jeans and a Western shirt, she flirted and invited me out. I agreed, and after a thrilling second set, we spent 3 days together in my hotel suite, then flew to Fiji for 10 more days. I fell for her when she taught me to drink beer through my nose, and we married a year later. Despite the pressures of filming, touring, and public attention, we managed better than most until recently. Returning to my mom's house after 7 years, I noticed it was just as I remembered. I called out to her, and she appeared, greeting me warmly despite her disheveled appearance. Noticing my rough state, she asked if I was interrupting anything, and I offered to stay at a motel for the night. Mom called her current partner, Dr. Bob, down from upstairs. To my surprise, he was significantly younger than her. Mom joked that his age helped him keep up with her. Dr. Bob greeted me warmly, and I apologized for the unexpected visit. He seemed genuinely pleased to see me. Mom reassured me that their relationship was over, which Dr. Bob's affectionate glance confirmed. Mom noticed I hadn't eaten properly in over 40 hours and made grilled cheese and tomato soup, my childhood favorite. While she cooked, Bob and I caught up on Grant City news. At the table, Bob asked about Tara, and I struggled to smile. Bob then suggested both Tara and I might be cheating. I admitted Tara's affair with Carl Simpson, which Mom responded to bluntly. Her straightforwardness, like Walter's, was refreshing. Bob was surprised by Mom's honesty and nearly choked on his soup. Mom criticized Carl Simpson's false charm and reckless behavior behind closed doors. Bob asked about my plans, and I said I needed to stay with Mom to relax and clear my head. Mom agreed, provided Bob was okay with it. I learned Bob had split from his previous partner, Elaine, and was now living with Mom. Mom hadn't mentioned this, and it made sense that Bob and Mom likely connected on New Year's Eve after a few drinks. Given Mom's charm and looks, it wasn't surprising Bob was into her. I laughed and asked Bob if I could stay with them. His serious look made me laugh harder, causing milk to spill through my nose. After a nap, I found a note from Mom saying she was out for the evening and Bob was at the office. Not wanting to be alone, I went to the hitching rail, where I used to work. The packed parking lot and busy dining room showed they were still serving great food. At the bar, Victoria, who was surprised to see me, gave me a big hug. She and her husband Ron owned the hitching rail for over 30 years and always treated their staff like family. Victoria mentioned it had been too long since we last met and led me to the kitchen to see Ron. Ron, busy and clean despite the kitchen mess, gave me a bear hug and commented on my appearance, laughing at my joke about California. He promised to fix me up with a proper meal. Victoria seated me at a small table and pointed out a redhead working at the waitress station. I recognized her as Amy Standish, who hadn't changed much in 10 years. The diner was filled with familiar faces, making it feel like home. "Hey, Amy," I said, surprised. Amy quickly took my drink order and then went off to attend to other tables. When she returned with a fresh beer, she swapped out the empty bottle and left again. Amy had been my high school crush, but despite my efforts, she never noticed me. She was focused and aloof, sticking to her group of brainy classmates. By the time she worked at the hitching rail, I was already a cook there. I admired her efficiency and reserved nature, though I once awkwardly tried to talk to her and got rejected. Ron later explained that Amy's shyness was due to her parents pushing her into the job to help her overcome it. Months later, a brief, "Hello, Nick," from Amy before college was a highlight for me. Now, sitting with Jimmy Schultz at the bar, I asked about Amy. Jimmy, now an insurance salesman, told me she had married a quiet engineer who left her for a male coworker. Amy is back in town, working as an English teacher and part-time at the bar. She's not seeing anyone and hasn't shown interest in dating. I went to get us another round and noticed the shortage of cocktail waitresses. I also asked Jimmy about Teddy. He still keeps in touch with Teddy, who lives on Foster Road, married to Jenny Layden with 2 daughters, and teaching English at the high school. Teddy occasionally plays in a bar band, which was ironic since he had left Leadfoot to avoid that scene. Jimmy's comment made me realize Teddy was happier living a simpler life, something he'd always preferred. Unlike me, Teddy had avoided the chaos of fame and built a fulfilling, normal life. He had it better than I did, and he also enjoyed Jenny Layden's company. As Walter and I walked home, he noticed my mood. I explained I had a lot on my mind, not just from Jimmy's comments, but also from realizing how out of touch I felt lately. I noted that my mom came from a small town, while Walter's family was from Chicago's elite. We were from different worlds, small town versus glamorous. Walter agreed, but I added that his behavior, like sleeping with starlets, only highlighted the contrast. Jimmy's comments made me see that Teddy's small town life, which I had viewed through a Hollywood lens, actually made him happier. Despite my success and wealth, I felt empty, with a superstar wife and even my best friend feeling like a ghost. Walter had started appearing to me a year after he died, following a show in Dallas. At first, I thought it was a bad trip, but he seemed too real and our conversations too clear. After months of private conversations with him, which felt creepy, I saw Dr. Salomon. Initial doctors thought it might be pills residue, but tests showed nothing. Dr. Salomon ruled out schizophrenia and suggested I was seeing a manifestation of my past, a way my mind was dealing with stress and unresolved issues, particularly with my father. Walter then was a stand-in for that absent support. Dr. Salomon's explanation made sense. He believed seeing Walter was a healthy way to handle my pressures, and that over time I'd just have internal dialogues. I felt better until Walter reappeared, mocking Dr. Salomon's theory and revealing details about his long-lost manuscript, which was published to acclaim 8 months later. After a few beers, good conversation, and a huge bacon cheeseburger, I slept well. Friday morning, I felt refreshed and saw my old cheerful self in the mirror. Even the 23 unread voicemails didn't dampen my mood. I had yogurt and coffee, then spent almost 11 hours writing music, inspired by a story about Lennon and McCartney. Bob stopped by for lunch, but I was too focused to take a break. I filled half my notebook with new ideas. When Mom and Bob went out for fish fry, I continued working on a new melody. It wasn't perfect, but it was close. I got ready slowly and walked to the hitching rail, arriving late to a packed bar where the band was playing a catchy Ernest Tubb tune. Victoria led me to the kitchen, where Ron was preparing food and joking about California ruining me. Amy, blushing and avoiding eye contact, was asked to get me a beer. Her scent lingered as she left. Victoria and Ron watched me, and I stammered about how good Amy looked. Ron joked about me needing to grow a pair, which made me laugh. After my meal, I returned to the bar and saw Jimmy Schultz chatting with Jenny Cooper, formerly Layden, who looked much the same as at prom, but with a bit more weight and a few lines on her face. I offered to buy drinks as the song ended. Jenny hugged me tightly, excited to see me, and Jimmy nodded a greeting, saying he'd handle the drinks since I'd be busy. Jenny asked if I'd play a song with Teddy and his band, saying it would mean a lot to the college guys. With memories of prom and her pleading eyes, I couldn't refuse. I agreed, and Jenny quickly informed Teddy. All eyes were on me as Teddy announced I'd be joining them. The crowd, familiar with me, looked surprised and excited. Teddy humorously introduced me, doubting my guitar skills but suggesting I might sing. The crowd's excitement was palpable, and I felt a strong urge to reconnect with these familiar faces. Climbing onto the stage, I exchanged a friendly jab and hug with Teddy, feeling the warmth of our reunion. Teddy suggested we get started, and I picked up an acoustic guitar. After a quick setup, we decided on Two Angels, starting with a piano lead, followed by my guitar, drums, bass, and Teddy's slide guitar. The song featured a standout piano performance and an extended instrumental. By the end, it felt like we'd never been apart. Teddy's voice was better than I remembered. After the cheers, Teddy introduced me to the crowd, and I asked to stay on stage. We jumped into Bob Dylan's Lily, Rosemary, and the Jack of Hearts, improvising the arrangement with Teddy's guitar licks and the piano shining. The place was packed with people dancing and streaming in. I stayed on stage, joined the band during breaks, and signed autographs. We played country rock classics and a few Leadfoot songs. By the last hour, the crowd was overflowing, and we ended with a harmony-filled version of Poco's Keep On Tryin', which drove the crowd wild even though our voices were shot. After helping with the teardown, accepting free beers, and watching the bartenders clean up, we wrapped up with a final beer in the dim bar room with Ron, Victoria, Jenny, Teddy, and the band. Ron suggested we do this more often so he could retire eventually. Suddenly, I heard Amy's quiet voice behind me. We locked eyes and I was speechless. Jenny broke the moment with a tease, while Ron muttered about California ruining me, making Amy smile before she complimented the performance and left. Teddy and Victoria teased me about still having feelings for Amy, and Ron suggested I was too scared to act. Jenny warned me not to get too close, as Amy had been through enough. Victoria noticed my reaction when my marriage was mentioned and whispered to Ron, who nodded, understanding my issues. Teddy asked about my plans for the next day, and I mentioned writing. Jenny invited me to a cookout at their house, mentioning Amy and her son would be there. I agreed, excited about the idea. Teddy thought it would be good for me to hang out with normal folks. Little did we know, the next day would be anything but typical in Grant City. I slept in until nearly 11 on Saturday, only to be woken by Mom yelling about people on her lawn. It was press and fans. I quickly got ready, knowing I had to look perfect to avoid rumors of a pills binge or scandal. 15 minutes later, I joined Mom on the porch, smiling at her and facing the reporters and cameramen. I directed the reporters to the sidewalk and then onto the porch, setting the rule of ladies first and then left to right. The first question from Entertainment Tonight was about the viral videos of me and Teddy Cooper and if I was leaving Leadfoot to form a new band. I clarified I had no plans to leave Leadfoot. I was just visiting family and supporting an old friend. Another reporter asked about leaving mid-record negotiations. I said Ethan Rose, our manager, was handling that, and I just needed a break. When asked about rumors involving Tara Boyd and Carl Simpson, I reassured them that Tara and I were fine, and I was simply taking a break. After half an hour of questioning, I stuck to my story. The reporters thanked me, apologized to Mom, and left to edit the footage. I told Mom I was heading to Teddy's cookout, and she and Bob might come by later. I packed my guitars into the Escalade and took a scenic route to avoid the press, arriving at Teddy's place around 12:30. Teddy greeted me and led me to the deck where he was grilling. Nearby, kids were playing in the pool. Teddy mentioned he had dealt with reporters that morning by threatening to call the cops. I laughed, wishing I could have done the same. I grabbed a Diet Pepsi and settled into a lawn chair. Teddy joined me after preparing the pork shoulders. We spent the next 20 minutes chatting, catching up on life, and keeping an eye on the kids in the pool. Teddy updated me on who was married, had kids, and where they worked, and we talked seriously about the past 6 years. Teddy asked why I was back, and I initially avoided the question, focusing on some oak trees. Eventually, I asked if he was happy. He said he was, and I admitted I wasn't sure if I was. It seemed like what I wanted, but it felt overwhelming now. Teddy advised me to just get out, but I explained it wasn't simple due to my band obligations and my wife's unwillingness to move here. When asked about the rumors of Tara and Carl, I confirmed them. Teddy shared that Carl had tried something similar with Jenny years ago, but she had shut him down. I told Teddy I was conflicted about Tara, loving her, but fearing change. He suggested I talk to Tara to understand why it happened, which would help me decide if it was a one-time mistake or something that might recur. He also joked about famous people's tolerance for such issues. Teddy's advice was clearer than Walter's. He shared a story about someone who found their partner with someone else and discovered she was just looking for someone new before ending things. He suggested that if there's genuine love, it might be worth trying to fix things instead of giving up immediately. Jenny's voice cut in as she overheard Teddy's metaphor about fixing a lawnmower. Teddy reassured me that only I could decide if my marriage was salvageable, noting that many couples work through rough patches and end up happy. Afterward, I went to get beers and saw Jenny and Amy preparing food. They froze when I entered. Jenny quickly hugged me, but Amy avoided eye contact and muttered a hello. It seemed like they had overheard my conversation with Teddy, which worried me. Back on the deck, I handed out drinks and joined a debate with Will about Warren Zevon versus Ray Charles. We agreed that while Zevon was versatile, Charles excelled in jazz. As more guests arrived, we moved to the pole barn to play some music. Teddy asked me to perform Time to Start Again, one of our old hits about mending a broken relationship. I sat up on a stool and played the song, noticing Amy swaying to the music and watching me closely. When the song ended, the room was silent. Amy, now bright red, was clearly moved. Will suggested a break and everyone went for drinks, leaving Amy and me alone. Amy apologized for overhearing my talk with Teddy and said she understood what I was going through. I tried to smile but felt awkward. She asked about the song and I told her I hoped it would cheer her up. I then played If I Only Had a Brain from The Wizard of Oz. Amy laughed through her tears and even joined in at the end. I invited her to sit beside me and she did after a bit of hesitation. I asked about her little boy in the pool and her face lit up when she talked about Brighton. We chatted as I played and I noticed she was more at ease. It was time to say what I'd been avoiding for years. I stopped playing and folded my arms over the guitar, wanting to say something I'd been holding back for a long time. Amy's face grew serious and she admitted she'd had similar feelings since I'd asked her to homecoming. She explained she was scared and wished she had said yes back then. She'd wondered how things might have been different, especially after her divorce. I was stunned, and Amy urged me to say something. I muttered my surprise and we both laughed at the absurdity of it all. But then Amy became serious again, making it clear she wasn't interested in being the other woman. She insisted that if I decided to leave my wife, she wouldn't be part of that decision or relationship. I agreed, acknowledging that, after all this time, it was good just to talk openly. I wasn't looking to complicate things further, especially with someone I barely knew. Our conversation was cut short by the sound of a helicopter landing nearby, signaling that new complications were on the way. Amy and I stood outside watching the helicopter land a few hundred feet away. Teddy's little girls ran up, excitedly calling the newcomer Uncle Ethan. I was surprised they knew him so well and felt a pang of guilt for not staying closer with Teddy. Ethan emerged from the helicopter, helping out Monty Evans, the Columbia exec handling our contract. I cursed under my breath. I'd hoped to avoid him on this trip. Amy noticed my reaction and asked if I knew Monty. I confirmed with a nod and walked over, joined by Teddy, who looked happy to see Ethan, but puzzled by my irritation. Ethan greeted us cheerfully, asking if they could join the party. Teddy welcomed them and introduced Monty, but I ignored their handshakes and glared. Ethan tried to smooth things over, mentioning the viral video from last night. Monty apologized, explaining that the situation with the video and the rumors about Tara and Carl had become urgent. He asked if we could get the rest of the band out here for a quick meeting. Teddy said they were at the house, and I tried to brush it off, but Monty insisted, stressing the seriousness of the situation. Ethan turned to me, clearly frustrated. He explained that Monty's bosses and all of LA had caught wind of the situation, and the news was about to explode everywhere. They were hesitant to continue talks with Leadfoot because Carl's drama made the deal too risky. I realized my career might be in serious trouble if we didn't address this soon. Even though I was considering quitting anyway, I didn't want to narrow my options too drastically. Monty broke into my thoughts, mentioning that the situation had worsened overnight but had shifted when the videos started trending online. Teddy and I guided Ethan and Monty to the pole barn, where Teddy went to round up the rest of the band. Will, Rob, and Jimbo. I watched as they entered, each showing a mix of nerves and excitement. Will was tall and brooding, Rob was muscular with a crew cut, and Jimbo had a straightforward, down-to-earth demeanor. Teddy seemed oddly amused, and I had a sense of what was coming. Monty started talking about the attention from last night's performance, hinting at big news. Ethan nudged him to continue, and Monty revealed that Bob Dylan had called, praising our rendition of Lily, Rosemary, and the Jack of Hearts. Teddy seemed unfazed by the news. But I was clearly surprised, especially seeing Will and Jimbo so excited. Regardless of personal tastes, Bob Dylan's praise is a huge deal in the industry. When Dylan speaks, record executives pay attention, especially after his recent reinvention. Monty asked to see what we had, and Teddy agreed, though he was unsure. Monty wanted to see us perform without interruptions, so we played 4 more songs, a mix of upbeat tunes, a ballad, and a medium-tempo piece. Monty recorded everything on a camcorder, which, while not perfect, was better than a shaky YouTube upload. Afterward, Monty thanked us, skipped the food, and promised to call the next day before leaving in the helicopter. Ethan stuck around for the party, and I was surprised to see how well everyone knew him. My guilt for not staying in touch with Teddy grew when Mom revealed she had helped recruit Will, Rob, and Jimbo from Chadwick College. She just asked the music professors for recommendations and put them in touch with Teddy. An hour later, Teddy and I were in the kitchen shredding pork shoulders for sandwiches. He handed me some plastic bear claws and showed me how to use them. As we worked, Teddy mentioned he was seriously considering something but didn't go into details until Ethan came in. Ethan and Teddy exchanged glances, and Ethan joined us, ignoring my questions while grabbing another pair of bear claws. I realized Ethan knew his way around the kitchen, which was another surprise. As we shredded the pork in silence, I waited for Teddy to explain what was really going on. Ethan broke the silence, revealing that Leadfoot had been struggling since the second album. While our popularity had kept us selling millions and packing arenas, our songwriting had declined. He shared that he had flown in to see Teddy about a year after our Grammy win, noticing the drop in quality and hoping Teddy would still be writing. I was surprised to hear Teddy was still writing. Ethan admitted that Teddy's new stuff was only fit for album filler, not hits. Teddy had been trying to convince Ethan to get us back together, but it never happened. When I asked why they hadn't just reached out earlier, Ethan explained that they tried to approach me during a busy period for our last album, Cactus Rose. When I pressed further, Teddy admitted that he had received my latest batch of songs 5 months ago, after the American tour, and had reworked most of them. I was initially pleased, but my smile quickly faded as I waited for more details. Ethan revealed that the songs we'd been negotiating with were mine, and that Teddy hadn't been involved. He'd only seen my rewrites recently, and agreed they were better, but not quite right yet. The issue was that he learned about Carl and Tara shortly before getting the updated songs, which meant he knew about it for 2 months without telling me. I was furious and struggled to keep my hands from hitting the counter. I confronted Ethan and Teddy, demanding to know why they hadn't informed me sooner. Teddy retorted that I hadn't been in touch for 6 years and had ignored his wedding invitation, so he didn't see the point in updating me. Jenny's voice cut through our argument, reminding us we had guests outside who didn't need to hear our drama. We sheepishly returned to shredding the pork, while Jenny put on a cheerful front for the guests. I told Teddy I never saw the invitation and felt awful about how I'd treated him. He said I needed to figure things out with Tara, and even if he wouldn't forgive her, he thought I should decide for myself. I then asked Ethan if it was just about the money. He assured me it wasn't, that he cared about me like a brother and didn't want to see me lose everything without a backup plan. Teddy pointed out that Ethan did tell me, but Ethan clarified that he'd ended the negotiations early because he had a tip about Carl and Tara meeting. He didn't think I'd believe him over Tara or Carl, so he didn't mention it. Ethan explained his plan was to help me stay in the band and keep my career on track, even offering to help find a new bass player. Teddy confirmed he was in on the plan. This was a lot to process, and I was pretty pissed. But honestly, I couldn't blame either of them. Ethan had been looking out for me and Leadfoot, even if it was partly for his own interests. I asked what the afternoon was about. Ethan explained that the YouTube videos were blowing up, way bigger than expected. They were getting tens of millions of hits, and even Bob Dylan had taken notice. Columbia was keen to cash in on this, and Monty saw the potential in reuniting us. If Ethan had shown him the rewrites earlier, we might already have the contract and be dealing with kicking Carl out. My anger faded, replaced by a grin. Carl was in serious trouble now. Ethan confirmed he was nearly broke, which surprised Teddy. Ethan mentioned that Carl was spending faster than he could earn and didn't have song royalties like us. Carl had lavish places everywhere: Aspen, New York, Malibu, and even London. I laughed at the thought of Carl chasing London women. We finished shredding the pork and started setting up the trays. I apologized to Teddy, who admitted he might have been too harsh. He'd intentionally sent the wedding invitation to my old address to keep it low-key, which I could only laugh at. We brought the trays outside, and I noticed Amy watching me. Teddy went over, kissed her forehead, and whispered something. She smiled at me, and I wished I'd been the one comforting her. With a beer in hand, I stood alone, thinking about how Tara's infidelity had likely been ongoing. I doubted I'd ever fully get over it, but I decided to hear her out. After 5 years together, I needed to understand the full extent of what happened. Amy's hand on my shoulder broke my thoughts. She asked about my mood, and I shared a saying from my father. Some days you're the pigeon, and some days you're the statue. Her laughter was bright and pure, and it made me feel good to see her so happy. But the next morning, Walter's grumbling woke me up. It was just after 9, and he told me Tara had been on morning shows bad-mouthing me. I thought I was dreaming until he literally threw the blankets off me. I scrambled to get ready as he warned that the press would be arriving soon. In the kitchen, Dr. Bob and Carol were already on edge. Carol asked if I'd heard the news, and when I confirmed it, she wanted to know if it was true. I assured her it wasn't. Bob patted my shoulder, confirming what he'd already told her. The phone rang, and Carol handed it to me. Ethan was on the line, sounding unusually upbeat. He informed me that Tara's team had gone public, portraying her as the wronged party. I was frustrated and confused. Why did she have to handle it this way? It only made a bad situation worse. I asked how he planned to handle things, but he said he'd fill me in once I got to Teddy's place. He advised me to wait until the media showed up and then drive out to Teddy's house so they'd follow me and avoid bothering my mom. Teddy assured me his family was fine with it. Half an hour later, I arrived at Teddy's, closely followed by a line of news vans that stayed off his property. Inside, Teddy showed me the talk show where Tara was being interviewed. The host, with a faux sincere tone, asked Tara about trouble in our marriage. When Tara's smile faltered, the host pushed further, questioning her about rumors of her seeing Carl Simpson from the band. Tara spoke softly as the camera zoomed in on her pained expression. "Carl and I are just friends," she said. "He's helping me through a tough time." The interviewer was eager. "What's going on in your life right now?" Tara's tone turned resolute. "Nick has been having affairs," she revealed. "Carl told me, and though I was skeptical, my agent, who's also a close friend, confirmed it. Nick's infidelities are true." The interviewer pressed, "How many women?" "I'd rather not say," Tara replied. "I confronted Nick last Wednesday and he left. I haven't seen him since." Teddy, who had been watching, turned off the TV, looking frustrated despite his attempt at a smile. Ethan, on the other hand, was smiling. "Looks like things have changed," he said. I realized that the talk with Tara was off. She'd forced my hand, and I decided to play the cards she'd dealt me and get her out of my life. Ethan laid out our choices. We can let her get away with this, or we can bury her. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to elaborate. "I've documented everything from the start," Ethan said. "We have photos, videos, and affidavits. After our talk yesterday, I had people digging deeper in LA. We might have more details soon." I was shocked. "There's more?" "Yep," Ethan confirmed. "She's been with several co-stars. Many in the cast and crew know and are willing to share." I felt a chill. This was typical Hollywood, but I never thought my wife was part of it. The facade of America's sweetheart was shattered. "So what now?" Ethan asked. I looked at Teddy, who was nervously clenching his jaw. "Bury the witch!" Jenny shouted from the kitchen. I chuckled. "You agree?" I asked Teddy. He nodded. "Talking won't help. You have all the answers about your marriage. So let's discuss our options," I said to Ethan. "If we do nothing?" "Your career takes a hit," Ethan replied. "New record negotiations for Mustang Ranch could be tough." "Come on," I said. "This happens all the time. It never hurt Mick Jagger, did it?" Ethan laughed. "True, Mick Jagger's image was always the bad boy, but you've been the quiet, thoughtful poet, the good guy. If you don't address this, you risk destroying that image. Columbia will see it as a threat to millions. Your crossover appeal is huge. Rock fans might not care, but the churchgoers in small towns will." I glanced out at the press vans and then back at Ethan. "Okay, how do we handle this?" Ethan grinned and opened his briefcase. 20 minutes later, Teddy had the press set up in the pole barn. I walked in, and the reporters immediately fired questions at me. When they quieted down, I said, "Same rules as yesterday. Ladies first, then the men from my left to right." I pointed to the young reporter who had gone first the day before. "Sorry, you went first yesterday," I said, then addressed the smartly dressed reporter who had gone second. "Mr. Harlan," she began, clearly angry, either about my previous evasions or my infidelities. Ethan had predicted she'd be a strong choice, and her tone suggested she was ready to pounce. "Miss Lockhart," I replied, maintaining a pained expression. "Mr. Harlan, your wife told Valerie Plymouth that you've ruined your marriage with multiple affairs. Is there any truth to these allegations?" I took a deep breath, made eye contact with the reporters, and prepared to respond. "I regret to say Tara was partially right," I began. Flashes from cameras blinded me momentarily, helping me keep a pained expression. "Our marriage is indeed over, but she was wrong about me being unfaithful." I pulled out documents from an envelope and addressed the reporter from Entertainment Tonight. "Your turn, Miss Miller." "So you're saying you've never cheated on your wife?" she asked. "Not once," I replied. "If Tara has any proof otherwise, I'd like to see it. Until Wednesday afternoon, when I found her with one of my oldest friends in our home, I thought my marriage was perfect. Clearly, I was wrong." "Are you saying she was the one cheating?" asked a male reporter with cameras closing in. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying," I confirmed. "Do you have proof?" demanded the initial reporter. I turned to the next man. "Do you have any proof to back up your claims?" he asked the reporter. I held up the documents. "This report from A&R Investigations of Malibu will show that Tara was not truthful this morning." "In what ways was she untruthful?" asked another reporter. "She's been having an intensely physical relationship with Carl Simpson for at least the past 2 months," I said, my voice trembling. I paused, savoring the moment as the scorned husband. "This report has dates, times, photos, and more," I continued. "And it appears this isn't the first time something like this happened in our marriage. Do you know of any others?" someone shouted. "I don't want to go into further details," I said, putting the report back into the envelope. "My manager will provide a redacted version soon. I loved my wife deeply and thought she loved me. I've been faithful from the start. It's a dreadful shock to find out Tara didn't feel the same." As questions flew, I raised my hands for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I need to handle this privately with my family and friends. Please respect that." I left the pole barn, leaving Ethan to manage the press. "How'd it go?" Teddy asked. I felt exhausted. The fun had worn off, and reality set in. My marriage was over. My wife had repeatedly betrayed me, and the world would now be following this scandal. Jenny hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "You really deserved better, Nick," she said. I hugged her back, struggling to hold back my own tears. By noon, the press had left and the band arrived at the driveway. Jimbo asked if there was any news, and Ethan mentioned that Monty would be arriving in about an hour. Teddy said nothing was decided yet and suggested we wait to hear what Monty had to say. When Monty arrived, he offered a recording contract from Columbia. The terms weren't great up front, but included incentives for high sales. It was almost as good as what Leadfoot had been offered, which was surprising given Leadfoot's track record. Monty emphasized that my involvement was crucial. I asked if Leadfoot was done, and Monty confirmed it was due to Tara's public statement. He said even if we dropped Carl, they wouldn't re-sign Leadfoot amidst the current turmoil. Monty also pointed out that adding a new band member and dealing with songwriting would be a risk. Monty told Teddy that Columbia wanted all 5 members of the band, not just Nick and Teddy. They believed in the chemistry among all of us and saw potential in our unique sound, though it was a risk. Monty thought the payoff would come from the combined efforts of the full band. Teddy agreed but said he had a condition. He wanted a 2-year commitment with 2 albums, and if things weren't working out or if it hurt his family, he wanted the option to opt out of the 3rd album. Will, Rob, and Jimbo were all in favor, and I agreed too. Teddy made it clear that his family came first, and Monty seemed concerned about how this might affect the terms. Teddy proposed that if we stayed together, Monty would get an automatic option for a 4th album on the same terms as the 3rd, with no right for Teddy to withdraw. Monty thought it over and agreed to come back after lunch for an answer. When Monty left, Jenny asked about the deal. Teddy said it was a good offer, and she turned to me, asking if I would take care of her. I looked at everyone, Teddy, Ethan, Rob, Will, and Jimbo, waiting to see if I was in or out. Amy stood in the kitchen doorway with her son, her expression unreadable. I needed air, so I stepped outside. 10 minutes later, Amy joined me, saying Teddy was eager to rejoin the band. He'd regretted leaving and had been pushing to get back in with the new songs. I told her it all felt overwhelming, and I needed time to process. She reassured me that Teddy and Jenny cared and would be there for me, and the band could offer a distraction. Then I asked Amy how she'd feel if I went back on the road. She didn't flinch and said it didn't matter. As she took my hand and led me toward the trees, she made it clear that right now there was no us, only me and her. I stayed silent, and Amy continued, explaining that while she liked me, we were different people now and barely knew each other back then. I was clinging to old memories and fantasies. She acknowledged my interest in getting to know her better, but she wasn't going to rush into anything with me while my marriage was falling apart. She also mentioned her son and how she didn't want to deal with more turmoil. I understood her point, but kissed her anyway. Her initial shock faded as she started kissing back, but she pulled away, upset. She scolded me, but I thanked her for giving me something hopeful to look forward to. She softened, hugged me tightly, and said this would be all she'd give me for a while. Back inside, everyone in the living room turned to watch as Amy and I walked in. She sat on the love seat and left space for me next to her. I sat down, glanced at her, and then at the others. I've made some decisions and have a few demands, I started. Rob and Jimbo exchanged high fives again, and Will pumped his fist, clearly excited. I hoped they were ready for what was coming. I told Teddy I wouldn't be running the band. Instead, they would make decisions and then run them by me for approval. I didn't want to be in charge or handle the decision-making anymore. Ethan and Teddy seemed puzzled. I explained that Leadfoot had been burdened with too much responsibility falling on me alone, and I needed to shift that weight. I wanted them to handle the decisions and keep me in the loop without involving me in every detail. Teddy asked if I wanted the power to veto everything. I clarified that I just wanted to approve major decisions and be informed of the direction we were taking. I didn't care about minor details like dinner plans or hiring choices. I emphasized that we needed consensus on major decisions to avoid division. I wanted to be updated on decisions without being directly involved in the process. Teddy and the guys agreed to the terms. I made it clear I couldn't handle decisions right now, so they'd need to make them and just keep me informed. Songwriting would be separate, and everyone would have their shot. Will and Rob were on board, and Teddy gave a hesitant nod, looking at Jenny. Monty came back with basic agreements for our attorneys, and Columbia was fine with Teddy's terms. My conditions stayed between Ethan and the band. In just 5 days, I'd left a major rock band and a high-profile marriage, and was now diving into a new band with a fresh lineup. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop wondering why Tara had betrayed me, and if I'd ever be able to start fresh with someone like Amy. The next day around noon, Teddy and I were finalizing 2 songs we'd been working on late into Sunday night. By Monday at 11, Will, Rob, and Jimbo joined us in the pole barn to work on the first song, When I Get Back. Will surprised us with a fresh arrangement, turning a slow ballad into a rockabilly track with dual-led vocals and a dynamic mix of instruments. It was a new direction, but it fit the new lineup perfectly. Teddy was the first to see her. I was focused on Jimbo and the rhythm guitar when Teddy's lead line ended in a screech. I turned to him, only to see his eyes shift to the door. "Hey, Nick," Tara greeted me. She looked terrible. From what Ethan told me last night before he left and what Jenny said this morning, the media was having a heyday with her troubles. It looked like the private investigators' findings had been verified, and now new scandals were coming out almost every hour. "What do you need?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Guys," Teddy said, "how about we head up to the house for a bit?" Rob and Jimbo wasted no time leaving, checking Tara out as they walked by. I thought, if you play your cards right, you might get a chance with her. Once we were alone, I sat on a stool and waited her out. I didn't try to hide my anger or disdain, and she seemed unsure about moving from the entrance of the pole barn. She then whispered something, but I couldn't hear what it was. "What did you say?" I asked. "I was asking if you could call off the dogs now," she said, tears running down her face. This seemed genuine, given her usual lack of tears on command. "Just tell them to stop. You've made your point. I didn't start this fight," I said, my voice getting louder. "And now you, the one who spread the rumor that I was the unfaithful spouse, have the nerve to ask me to do something you didn't even do for me?" "It wasn't my idea. Janice made me do it," she said, confirming my suspicion that her manager was behind this. "She said you'd destroy me unless I took action." "That's nonsense," I roared. "She must have told you that you could turn a bad situation into something good, right?" Tara didn't try to deny it. "You were leaving me," she said. I replied, "You were cheating on me." Her anger cut through her tears. "Oh, get over yourself," she snapped. "You already knew." I was stunned. "How can you possibly think that?" "Didn't you read the tabloids?" she said. "They printed almost every rumor about who I was with." "But you denied all of them," I pointed out. I stopped asking after a while because I thought it was just typical nonsense. She remained silent, wiping her tears and avoiding eye contact. "Seriously, Tara, with Carl? You must have known I was completely unaware," I said. She nodded. "So why would you assume I knew about the others? You knew I'd be mad. That's why you kept it a secret. So you also knew I'd be angry about the other ones, right?" She nodded again, no longer trying to pretend I didn't care. "How many were there?" I asked. "Does it even matter?" she replied, clearly afraid to answer. "You know most of them now, or at least Ethan does." "So they're all true?" She nodded. "So that's not even all of them? That's just most of them?" I asked. Her expression showed she realized she had said too much. "Can't we move past this, Nick? If I stop now, can we get past this?" she pleaded. I laughed, and her hurt expression turned into anger at being dismissed. "Let me ask you something, Tara," I said. "Imagine you find out that every time someone comes to your house, they steal something. Not just once, but dozens of times. If you found out, would you invite them back?" "This isn't about house guests, Nick," she shouted. "This is our marriage." "Exactly. You took something far more valuable than silverware, Tara. You took my self-respect. You destroyed something I thought was perfect. Now I'm not sure if we ever had a real marriage. I question whether you ever truly loved me, or if I was just another way to boost your image." Her tears started flowing again. "You were never just a publicity stunt," she sobbed. "I've loved you since we first met. More than anyone else, Nick. You have to believe that." "That's not true," I retorted. "You've always loved yourself more than you've loved me." Her reaction showed that I had hit a nerve. "So what you said on the phone earlier," she said. "That's true, isn't it?" "Yeah, Tara," I confirmed, understanding what she meant. "I've stayed faithful to you from the start," she nodded, wiping away more tears and sniffling. "You're right," she admitted. "I'm not good enough for you." She laughed. "Honestly, I wouldn't stay married to me either." She came over and lightly touched my face. "Please, Nick, for old time's sake, can you have Ethan call off the dogs?" "And the divorce will go through according to the prenups?" I asked. "No lengthy legal battles? No more attacks in the media?" She smiled and nodded. "I swear." "And what about my things from the house?" I asked. "They're in my car," she answered, pointing towards the driveway. I thought it over, why not? I figured this would wrap things up quickly and with minimal fuss. No need to return to LA, and I could be done with her with just a few signatures. Most importantly, it seemed like her public image had already been sufficiently damaged, and Carl was now just a distant memory. So, Yes, maybe I was being a bit lenient, but ending this quickly and moving on with my life seemed worth it. All right, I said. We file for divorce right away, citing irreconcilable differences. I want to see the proposed settlement papers by next Monday, and then it's all over. Can you manage that? She hugged me. I promise, she said. If you handle this, I'll call off the dogs, I told her. She pulled away from the hug. Do you think you can call them off now? The sooner I get the paperwork, the sooner Ethan will back off, I replied. She wasn't thrilled, but her expression suggested she was getting a better deal than she expected. Thanks, Nick, she said softly. She leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. And Nick? I looked at her one last time as my wife. Yes. Tara, I'm truly sorry, she said, her eyes filling with tears again. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I still love you. I'm sorry too, I replied, deciding to call off the dogs now and deal with any issues later if she didn't keep her promise. She kept her word, though. The next morning, a courier delivered the settlement documents, so that's the whirlwind of those 5 crazy days. Carl went bankrupt about 18 months ago, sold his fancy houses, and now lives in a smaller Malibu place. He's doing studio work and occasionally seen with a starlet. Vince, our drummer, left music behind after making some savvy investments. He's now living in Scotland, painting and golfing. He's shown interest in maybe joining us on an album for some dual percussion like the old Allman Brothers. John Booma, our former lead guitarist, is now our producer. He's doing well, working with Teddy and Will on great new tunes and producing other acts in Nashville and LA. He's glad to be off the road. Tara's career tanked after our divorce, and she was dropped from her show when ratings plummeted. Though her divorce was quick and the press was hushed, her reputation took a hit. She pops up in small roles now, but has lost her America's sweetheart status. Rob ended up with her, and he told me they spent the night talking about me, even during their more intimate moments. I just laughed when he shared that, despite his embarrassment. The Mustang Ranch in Nevada tried to sue us over their name, but we refused to back down. Meanwhile, Will kept bringing his basset hound, General Beauregard, to practice. We thought it'd make a great band name, though we weren't naming ourselves after the Confederate general. 5 months later, General Beauregard's debut album, Another Happy Face, was released to rave reviews. It sold 8 million copies, with 2 #1 rock singles and 3 top 10 country hits. Our follow-up album, Saturday Night Drive-In, released with our first major tour, went diamond, selling 11 million copies in just over a year. The tour sold out before it even started, and the reviews were even better than for the album. Teddy's managing everything well, bringing Jenny and the girls on tour in their own bus. I sometimes join them to work on songs, but with all the noise from the kids, it's hard to get much done. So, the kids? Teddy's daughters, plus Brighton and Walter. Walter, as you saw in People, was said to be born 10 months ago to Nick and Amy Harlan, the local success story. But that was all a publicity stunt by Ethan and the team. The real story is a bit more complicated. It took almost 8 months after that weekend for Amy to agree to a date, and even longer for her to accept my proposal. Amy has since been keeping me on my toes, and I'm hoping she keeps surprising me with new ways to keep things exciting. We live close to Teddy, Jenny, and their kids, maintaining a normal life in Grant City, where people know us well and aren't swayed by our fame. As for Walter, I'll save his story for another time, but he's forgiven me and sends his best.